Hello, I'm Benedict Beckeld, and in light of recent events in Charlottesville, Virginia, and of the consequent drive to dismantle Confederate monuments, I'd like to take a few moments to discuss some particulars of history and mob rule from a philosophical perspective. As so often, it is a good idea to begin with the ancient Greeks. The pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Anaximander came up with something that he called the Apeiron, which means literally the unlimited. Many other pre-Socratic philosophers had posited an element like air or fire or water to be the prime element from which everything else in the world emanates. But Anaximander got rid of those and said that instead it is the apeiron, the unlimited, which is the basis of everything. Now, since the elements usually were connected to a god in the Greek pantheon in some way, just like Earth, for example, was the goddess Gaia, which literally means earth in Greek, Anaximander, by discarding or demoting the elements from their special role, played a crucial part in the move of the Greek world from mythology to science. Now, if the world is in some sense apeiron, unlimited, as Anaximander said, then we can never chart it completely, which means that we can never claim full knowledge. While theocracy and autocracy arrested development in the other civilizations that surrounded ancient Greece, the Greeks themselves allowed philosophy and science and the arts to flourish by precisely recognizing the limits to their own knowledge. When we forget the apeiron, we come to believe that we have all the answers, and we then begin to bully others to conform to our point of view, and that's when our democracy will begin to decline. This might sound like scaremongering, but it is important to remember that systems of government are inherently unstable, and that's because they are constructed and composed of human beings who, by their very nature, are unstable. Some philosophers of history, like Hegel on the political right and Marx on the left, have believed that history is progressing toward an ultimate goal. All such notions have been held many times and have been proven wrong just as many times. Whenever a philosopher has posited an end to history, that end has always, by happy coincidence, fallen within the lifetime of the philosopher in question, and so this philosophy has always been very narcissistic. But the main point I wish to make here is that the belief in the march of society toward an end is ultimately totalitarian, because if it is the case that society is progressing toward a goal, toward an end, then necessarily everything in that society must conform toward that march and toward that progress with no room for diversion. If, on the other hand, we recognize that history doesn't have an overarching goal or an ultimate purpose, then it becomes easier for us to tolerate those who are different from us and who think differently. And so whenever you hear politicians talk about so-and-so being on the wrong side of history, those politicians, surely without knowing it, are actually adopting a Marxist Hegelian language of history that is ultimately very totalitarian. So instead of recognizing a historical goal, we should be content with recognizing historical tendencies and cycles. The acknowledgement of historical cycles, the somber understanding that history repeats itself, is anti-utopian, which is a very good outcome because it has always been the utopians, whether socialist, communist, fascist, Nazi, religious or secularist, that have caused the most harm in the world. If a utopia can be established in spite of the literal meaning of the word, which is nowhere, then history ends. And those who want history to end have always been the madmen, because of course the end of history should be on their own particular terms. And this attitude, by the way, is very typical of social justice warriors nowadays, namely to claim personal superiority by advocating for social solutions that everyone should follow. And so once we view history as a progression toward a goal, tyranny inevitably follows. So although piecemeal improvement of our society is worth striving for, this must always be done in the spirit of the apeiron, that is, with the understanding that our suggested changes might be wrong. This doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but it does mean that our improvements and changes should take place slowly and with a deliberation, and not through the actions of a violent mob that will brook no other view. The mob has forgotten the apeiron and believes in a progressive goal of history, that is to say, the mob is totalitarian. And so to get back to the issue I mentioned in the beginning of this video, although I do actually think that a good case could be made for removing some Confederate monuments, if this is done by a mob who thinks that they are being brave by spitting and stomping on pieces of metal, then this will only ensure that our society will grow ever more tribal and ever less rational. The Czech dissident, author and politician Václav Havel once asked why it is so difficult for an open society to prevail against wave after wave of tribalism. One answer that I offer to this question is that the long-term survival of a society requires a certain tribe-like cohesion. Overcoming the tribal state and replacing that with reason is civilizational progress, but it also leads to more room for diverging attitudes to develop. In an early society, individual agendas are outweighed by family relationships and by the overarching concern of the society. But once the tribal state is overcome and the stronger a state grows and the bigger a state grows, the more room there then is for individual attitudes to develop and for more conflict, therefore, between different subgroups of that society to develop. And so in the more advanced society, there is in turn a sort of forward fall into a new tribalism of sorts, because each subgroup of the society will begin to form its own tribe, as it were, and will begin to view other subgroups of the same society as its enemies. And so just as the earlier era of a society had been the overcoming of tribalism, so the later era of that society is a return to a new kind of tribalism. And so acknowledging this conundrum and realizing that there is really no permanent solution to it is key to understanding the cyclical nature of history. And so we must grasp the Apeiron, we must grasp the infinity of all possible knowledge, and thereby humble ourselves regarding the supposed righteousness of our own outrage, even though moral outrage is all the rage these days. It is when we forget the Apeiron that our democracy begins to decline, because by believing that we have all the answers, we start to bully others into conforming to our point of view. And unfortunately, that is precisely what is happening today in America and in the West. Thank you for watching.